is Horror Sucks, the podcast where we watch terrible movies so you don't have to. I'm Ashley Atkins.
And I'm Carter Rhodes.
And this week, we're going to tell you why the Chainsaw Massacre 2022 sucks.
So, some of our qualifications. I have watched every Friday the 13th movie.
And I just really like horror.
And I hate it, and that's why we chose the name we did.
Exactly. So to kick us off for today, we will be drinking a signature cocktail. The recipe will be posted on our Instagram, but this is called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What is your opinion of the drink?
It's terrible. It's very apt for the movie.
Absolutely.
So it's Fireball, Campari, cranberry juice, and
An Angry Orchard.
Yep, Angry Orchard, and you can taste every ingredient separately.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It's not pleasant.
So, keep that in mind. That's going to shape our mood for the day.
But it's fitting. How we're going to do this is that we're going to go over the plot of the movie, provide some background info, and then we'll get into our analysis with a segment we call The Good, the Bad, and the Spooky. And then to wrap things up, we'll give an overall rating of what we each thought of the movie and let you know what we're watching for next week. So Carter, want to kick us off with the plot?
Okay, yes. So I have some general bullet points on how the plot is, but I'm just going to wing it as I go. So, movie takes place 50 years after the original, and they spent a good 5 minutes of recap, which is a funny concept to me because the title really tells you everything you need to know. There was a chainsaw massacre in Texas. I really don't need that much more information. So, 50 years later, the online influencers Melody, Dante's girlfriend, who literally in the subtitles is just referred to as Dante's partner, and Melody's sister Leela drive 7 hours to the abandoned town of Harlow, Texas, to open up their dream, which I do in air quotes. Their dream is to buy property from this abandoned town and sell it, presumably at a profit, and gentrify it with other millennial investors. While there, Dante and Melody see a Confederate flag in the window of a nearby orphanage. When they go to take it down, they find the last remaining resident of the town there. They get into an argument, and the stress causes her to have a heart attack. She is rushed to the hospital with her quote-unquote boy, the last orphan there, and it's heavily implied to be Leatherface. It's Leatherface.
No surprise there.
Yeah. So the millennials arrive on a single bus, even though supposedly they can afford to buy property. And they immediately walk around, take selfies, say other millennial things. And Richter, the mechanic, takes their keys for no real clear reason other than to strand them there. What else?
Well, he was mad at them.
Right, but
He was just being a jerk.
If I'm mad at you, I don't take your car keys. It's just a weird response. So the woman dies on the way to the hospital, and Leatherface snaps and kills everyone in the car, eventually cutting off the woman's face and putting it on his own. He returns home, digs his chainsaw out of the wall, and goes on a killing spree, eventually killing all the millennials on the bus in just a bloodbath, which kills everyone except Leela and Melody, who are rescued by Sally Hardesty, the final girl from the original movie, played by a different woman because previous actress died. Rest in peace. After a battle, Sally is killed by Leatherface, and Melody and Leela are in a car accident. Leela chases away Leatherface, but ultimately ends up following him, hoping to kill him once and for all. He surprises her, there's a scuffle, Melody saves her, and they presumably kill him. And as they drive away in their Tesla, which has autopilot, Melody is pulled through the window and has her head chopped off, while her sister, Leela, really just screams out the sunroof while the car's moving like autopilot 5 miles an hour. It is a very underwhelming way to end. And the movie ends with him dancing with Melody's severed head. And then, in a post-credit scene, returning to the original house from the original movie.
Great. Thanks, Carter. All right, so just some background information on the movie. It premiered on February 18th, 2022 on Netflix. It's directed by David Blue Garcia, who's known for his movies Tejano and Bloodfest, which were both released in 2018. It was originally supposed to be directed by Ryan and Andy Tohill, but before the movie was released, about halfway through the project, the producers looked at their film, decided they didn't like it, and fired them and hired on Garcia. The movie was shot in Bulgaria, and it stars Sarah Yarkin as Melody, Mark Burnham as Leatherface, and Elsie Kate Fisher as Lila, who is accredited for her role in 8th Grade. It was initially supposed to be released in 2021, but was pushed back. The film was number one on Netflix's top 10 movies in the U.S., Brazil, and Saudi Arabia, and a few other countries for 5 days after the release. And typically reviews are not in favor of the movie. So yeah.
You say they didn't like the movie, so they fired the directors and had them replace it. I want to know what cut of this movie lost to the current one.
Oh, I do too. They didn't keep any of that original footage. They completely reshot the entire movie.
I would love to see the movie that they looked at and said, no, this is worse. We're not releasing this one.
Me too. Eventually it'll get released. We'll do a special episode for that. But all right, let's get into the good, the bad, and the spooky. Carter, do you want to kick us off with the good?
Sure, yeah. There are two parts that were really my favorite part of the movie. The first one is the old woman I mentioned, kind of stumbles into the room, clearly not expecting anyone. It's not clear if she's a threat or not to these people, and she asks what they're doing there, and when they say they're the investors, she goes, oh, I wish you had called, I'd have put my face on, which I didn't know this because I'm a guy. A friend of mine had to tell me this a couple of years ago, but like, I need to put my face on is just slang for putting on makeup. I thought that was really a clever wordplay thing.
I do agree with that. I don't even think I really took note in that line because it's just my normal slang of when I put on makeup, I put my face on. That is really pretty clever.
I did like that. That woman in general is one of my favorite parts. She's a good actor, and she's the woman who was hanging the Confederate flag out her window, and she's very old, very sweet, and clearly well-meaning. And
I think we need to touch upon the flag if we're going to say that she's sweet. She does bring up the fact that like she only has the flag out because of her grandfather, her great-grandfather who fought in the war. And this flag is honestly pretty tattered. Like, it's not in good shape. So she doesn't take care of it. It just reminds her of the past. Clearly it's not kosher and, like, causes tension in the movie. It has a point.
She even says that she just didn't put any thought into it.
Yeah.
She didn't realize that people might take offense to it.
I mean, especially since no one lives there.
Yeah.
Besides her.
So anyway, she reminds me, the character reminded me a lot of just everyone's grandparent. They just sweet, maybe a little outdated, but you can tell their heart's in the right place. And that was a really interesting character. I cared about her. I was upset when she died, and that doesn't happen a lot with horror movie characters. And then probably my second favorite part of the movie is this one shot where Leatherface grabs a character who's running away and pulls them backwards through a swinging door in a scene very similar to one from the original. And the door continues to swing open and closed while Leatherface murders him in the background. So we get brief shots every couple of seconds of the scene, and I liked the way that was shot. That was interesting. I have some more, but why don't...
All right, I'll jump in. So overall, like, the thing I think that I appreciate the most is that, like, it was appropriately gory. Like, I wanted gore, I expected it, and I got it. But there were a few scenes that I actually kind of liked. The one where Melody is under the bed after Leatherface kind of gets his chainsaw out of the wall, and the mechanic? No, he's the contractor, is coming up the stairs, and, like, they use the mirror to show him, and it doesn't end well for him. But I thought it was a good scene. The other one I liked, and I'm sure you might have this on your list too, is when Melody's hiding in a closet And I think this is actually right before that last scene, but Melody's hiding in the orphanage mother's closet. And he opens the door, grabs a dress, doesn't see her, and then she can still see him through the slots in the door and, like, starts putting on her makeup on top of her face that he's wearing. I thought that was, I know you pointed it out while we were watching it, but it was a really good shot. And then last thing I have, I enjoyed the scene where he attacks everyone on the party bus. I especially like when they're kind of locked in the bathroom and he's, like, trying to get, like, use his chainsaw to saw through the door, and they manage to escape through the sunroof. And that whole scene was kind of really disorienting, but it was...
The only scene I particularly cared about during that bus massacre was at a certain point it stopped even cutting to outside the bathroom, and you just saw blood coming from under the door. That was the only thing I thought was cool.
Yeah. Once they stopped cutting outside of the bathroom is when it got kind of good.
So what you mentioned about Melody turning the mirror so that she could non-verbally show where Leatherface was hiding.
Mm-hmm. Is that on your bad?
No, that's in my good.
Oh, okay.
All the characters in the movie, and granted, it's not always a good thing that they're doing it, but I did think it was refreshing. They all acted very rationally. Like, no character stopped what they were doing and screamed. If they had reason to think Leatherface was nearby, they were silent until they knew they were safe.
I did appreciate that.
And granted, that's probably not the most realistic thing. I think it's probably more realistic that you'd freak out. But it was nice. At no point was I like, what are you doing, you idiot? They clearly were making the best decisions every time. And that was nice.
I agree.
There's one scene in which Leatherface puts the rotten face on. It's a field of rotting sunflowers. I thought that was a very pretty, colorful shot.
I was just going to mention that too.
And then lastly, I don't remember when in the movie it happened, but at one point a character addresses him as, "Hey, Leatherfuck." That's on my good. Okay. Is that everything we liked about it?
I think that's everything we liked. Not a whole lot.
No.
Okay, so I have a lot for the bad.
Yep, me too. Well, you start.
Okay, I'll start. You can go. So, my first note on the bad page is just so much. The main thing that I really didn't like is that there were too many overarching themes. One of the big themes that we didn't really mention that I felt, while it's an important topic, was not really important to the movie, was the issue with gun violence and school shooting. I understand...
I don't think I mentioned it, but Leela is a school shooting victim, and it didn't come up because it really didn't play a major role in the plot.
Exactly. Although part of that, the other theme is, like, overcoming trauma. Leela has to overcome her trauma from that to be able to hold a gun and shoot Leatherface.
Which is so insanely tasteless that her character arc was being able to fire a gun again.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't... I don't think they really did it well. And then there was another theme with, like, the two sisters and, like, them getting through this together and the overprotective sister and the traumatized sister. It just... I don't know. It kind of took away from what I was there for. And then also, there was a huge revenge plots. Lots of revenge plots. Because there was the revenge that Sally has against Leatherface. Then there's Leatherface trying to avenge the orphanage mom. And it just really those two, it was a little much, I thought. Mm-hmm. And then the gentrification and that whole thing. That I think was, like, actually an important theme because that set up the movie, but I don't know if I was really along for the ride.
My issue with the gentrification thing is that this town literally had 3 people in it when they arrived. It was Richter, who's only there to be their contractor. It was the orphanage woman and Leatherface. That's not gentrifying if you go into a town that's basically empty. That's just repopulating. Right,
and that's one of my other points, too. It's like, not only is, like, this town empty, it's also 7 hours from the city. No one's going there. It's not going to be a vacation home. No one's going to want to live there unless you have everything supplied. But all of these millennial influences and whatnot that are going there aren't going there to live there. It didn't make any sense. I didn't like the ending. Just leave it at that. I didn't like Sally's character or motivation.
Yeah, her character was difficult. They kept trying to establish her like she she went in and looked at the car and just stared at a photograph from the original, and like it zoomed in on her character's face. I was like, we get it. We know it's her.
Yeah. When they get in the car at one point and she's driving and she's like, you stay here. I'm going after him. I was like, why? And then she confronts him and she's like, do you know who I am? And he's like, no, I don't care about you. Like, he doesn't say that because he didn't say anything, but he just walks past her. And it was the dumbest thing, I felt.
So that ties into one of my biggest issues with this movie, which is that Leatherface, especially in the trailers, was described as the face of madness and pure evil. And in the original, he wasn't. He was nonverbal. He's so unintelligent that he cannot speak. He just is borderline abused by his family. He's just kind of the big dumb guy. And that was part of what was scary, is that he was to us what animals, or what the butcher is to animals. Is right. We couldn't understand him. He looked terrifying and huge, and he would just grab you and kill you. It just didn't care. There's nothing you could say that would change it. And so the idea of giving him revenge or evil or even ambivalence to people, rather than just something he sees as food, made it less scary.
I agree with that. Yeah, they changed his whole, not backstory, because they do reference that he came from this weird family, but they did change his backstory because then it became all about the orphanage and the woman that's there, and it made no sense. And I'd love for us to do, a true comparison to the original movie. That'll be probably a different episode. Mm-hmm. But for our sake, it just made no sense in his motivations. And yeah, it took away from the movie. His motivations in the original were very clear. And in this one, it wasn't. They
were clear, and they weren't ever even stated.
You didn't need to know.
He was chopping people up like...
You walked by, he grabbed you, you're dead. That's all you needed to know about him.
He didn't really jump out at you, because he wasn't trying to scare you. He just wanted to take you and kill you.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's revealed until the end, but eat you.
Exactly. I have a huge issue with that. I have more on that I want to save for my wrap-up, because I have a little rant.
So, by the way, there was no eating in this one.
No, that's also was the other thing. You didn't try to eat them.
You just kind of killed people.
Yeah. So, my other issue was, the millennials arriving on this party bus. First of all, they all arrived together. I don't understand why. Second of all, why would you drive 7 hours on a party bus where there's no place to sleep or comfortably sit? Also, they arrived with, no place to stay. There's no way they're not spending the night there. It's 7 hours away.
They were also clearly written by non-millennials. There's one scene, this is absolutely on my bad list. There's one scene where Leatherface gets on the bus and he's looking at all the millennials. They all stop partying and they raise their phones and start recording. And the lead millennial, I guess you'd call him, says, "Try anything and you're canceled, bro."
Oh my god, that was so stupid.
And that ties into what you were saying earlier about how there was so many conflicting themes. It seemed initially to be anti-gun violence, but then the character arc was that she needed to use a gun. It appeared to be anti-millennial. It made fun of them, and...
Listen, if they did one, I would have probably been fine with it. I feel like it would have been perceived better. Mm-hmm. Focus your energy.
Yeah, they made fun of millennials. They're like, look at them gentrifying. This is terrible. And then they go and the only people over the age of 20 in the movie are immediately killed.
Yeah. The other issue I have with that, too, is that there's way too much backstory for the characters, for the whole thing. And I know this is tying more from the original, but, we got very little backstory for them, and it was great. I mean, yes, I cared about them less, but I really didn't care about these guys either.
Yeah.
That was not the point. So... some scenes for the opening scene at the gas station where Melody tries to antagonize who we later find out is Richter because he has a gun on his belt loop.
She's antagonizing him too by saying man, you must have a real small penis for trying to bring a gun to a gas station, and it's the only building in at least a mile.
Yeah.
This isn't like someone brought an assault rifle into a Starbucks. This guy had a holster for his pistol. It was probably more irresponsible of him to leave it in the car.
He didn't leave it in the car. It was on his
Right,
side.
that's my point.
Oh, yeah.
It's better than if he just left it in the car.
Yeah, he has a right to have a gun. And also, like, know where you are.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say on that topic. I just thought that was her antagonizing him was pretty pointless. And the sister's like, dude, just stop. Like,
Yeah.
she knew where they were. After Dante gets attacked by Leatherface and he's just kind of walking in the rain, really her, it wasn't important. I don't know. I didn't really care for the scene.
Yeah, no, I didn't care for that.
Most of the scenes in the movie theater, I don't know. I didn't like it. Oh, my favorite scene I hated. I don't know if I truly disliked this. I just had a lot of issue with it. It was when Melody was under the bed. Leatherface breaks a window and stabs Richter on the glass that's still in the window pane. This glass was like no more than 3 inches deep. And it was implied that was what like really got him and stopped him from taking down Leatherface. And I found it pretty improbable, which was my issue with it.
My issue was just he clearly slammed his head against nothing. We paused it. There was nothing there.
Yeah, we did go look to figure out what the issue was. And all right, that's all I have for my bad.
Okay, I have some more. Most of it can go pretty quickly. Richter and Leela have this weird, like, sexual tension that I'm super uncomfortable with because he's, like, 45.
That's true.
And she looks barely 16.
The implication is that she's, like, high school age.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was really weird.
They really clearly had nothing in common. It was like they bonded over different experiences which had the same root cause. No, he just was kind of this rural contractor guy who just liked being independent. And I honestly can't name a single character trait other than survived a school shooting.
She was intrigued by the guns that he had.
Yeah, which
he did have more like bigger guns, but
the gun safety of that movie was atrocious. When talking with Leela, it's clear that like the emotion they're trying to dig at with her being a school shooting survivor isn't survivor guilt or sadness or anything. It's that she feels like now she's expected to do good things. Yeah. How can you possibly feel like that's if you wanted to do that, you could just run with she feels pressure from her parents to be good in college. That's a very common feeling, and it's not unique to school shooting survivors.
Yeah. Also, Melody makes a comment that she, like, had to get her out of there, that because Leela wants to go back with her dad, and she was like, no, I had to get you out of there, and it was, I didn't get it.
They didn't elaborate, so
No.
we don't know if her dad was abusive, if maybe...
I think it was just related to the school shooting.
Yeah.
Listen, I understand that it's a sensitive topic, and police violence is a huge issue right now. Mm-hmm. That's not what we're getting at. We're simply stating the fact that this was not the right movie to really bring it out on.
Yeah. Imagine having your story told in the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All right, so finishing up, there's a storm at one point. It's just the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. There are a lot of long, quiet scenes with no music, but they were just totally absent of tension. They were just quiet scenes, essentially. And lastly, the movie ends with her in the basement following the sound of Leatherface's chainsaw, and ultimately she's able to track it down, and it's just sitting there, and then he jumps out and attacks her. Leatherface is not outsmarting anyone. That was ridiculous.
I did put that on my spooky list because I did think it was... Listen, it was kind of spooky, but I also... agreed that it was not good.
Which is the perfect transition to
Absolutely.
The spooky. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, this movie was not really spooky. Definitely more on the gory side. You know, I wasn't really scared. But some scenes that I thought were particularly spooky, when he holds the old woman's face up to the sky before putting it on his. I know that's on your list, too. We can talk about it for a bit. I thought that was good. I know you had other reasons for liking it, so you can talk about that. But I wrote in my notes Simba because it definitely felt like that. Listen, that was my perception.
Yeah,
I thought it was kind of funny, but I also thought it was kind of spooky too. Well, what did you think of it?
I really liked that shot because it's in the field of rotting sunflowers, and it's almost entirely obscured what he's doing. Very little gore. and he takes the face, he like peels it up and raises it to the sun, and you can't even really see what it is until he raises it to the sky and you see the light through the eyes and mouth hole. And that just was a very good job of showing a lot with very little. I really liked that shot.
I agree.
And that was the first thing I told you that was going on my spooky list, and that's why I made that face.
I forgot about that. Listen, I don't remember much from watching it together. That's not true. I knew it was going to be on your list, but... Yeah. So, one of the things I thought was kind of spooky was when they were in the movie theater, but the water there, they kept, like, falling into the water and then popping up. And yeah, that was kind of predictable at the same time. Like, it did kind of scare me a little. Not scare me, but it was spooky. I
liked that it was a good... dark ending. A lot of movies end up being uplifting.
We made it out. We
did it. Yay. And so I liked that it ended with them joking around and then her sister just got... Well, I don't know that I liked it, but the fact spooky. That her sister got grabbed and then killed...
That was my next note. It was. I was not expecting it. That was the only thing that scared me. He rips her out of the car out of nowhere. That was kind of spooky. That was kind of scary.
So for me... One of the better parts of the movie is at the very, very, very end, the last shot before credits. He has her head and he just kind of starts dancing, and it's just this unhinged, there's no melody, there's no music, so he's just swinging his chainsaw and spinning his body, and that captured a lot of the original's terror of this thing that you can't understand or predict what they're doing. Is you just could only watch in horror. I thought that was spooky.
I agree. No, that was really spooky. I did not like that. Okay, before we get into our ending thoughts and stuff, I do have some questions for you because I was looking at my notes and I couldn't remember what they referred to.
Okay.
You did clarify one where it was try anything, you're canceled, bro.
Right, yeah.
But I wrote down eyes and then I wrote down The Weekend Away. I thought I would remember what they were, but I do not.
Eyes might be referring to when her face gets removed and you can see the eyes.
No, because it was like towards the end of the movie.
Towards the end of the movie, eyes.
Oh, I remember. Someone's eyes fell out of their head and they were rolling on the floor of the bus.
Oh, I don't remember that, but that sounds right.
I don't remember what The Weekend is Away, but I do want to mention one other scene that we haven't mentioned before we wrap up, which I don't know if I thought it was spooky. I kind of just enjoyed it for the gore that it was. So the main millennial investor, she had a few lines, and that's what it was important about her. But she, like, tries to climb out of the bus window, and Leatherface just chops her in half, and she, like, folds on either side of the window, and, like, you can see all her guts. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That was a good scene, yeah.
Yeah. It was on the spookier side of the gore. Like, it definitely was a good one. I forgot about that.
Are you ready to talk about our ratings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, we are rating it out of 10, but neither of us know the units, so we gave it to ourselves. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. Okay, so I gave it 6 traumatic bullet wounds. Lila has a traumatic bullet wound that she clutches at one point. So I gave it a 6. I didn't hate this movie. I didn't think it was that bad, but I'm not going to rewatch it anytime soon. So... Do you want to give yours before I give... Okay.
I would. Mine was 3 millennials cut in half.
Oh, good one.
I did not care for the movie at all. It did very few things laughably bad, but it did almost nothing, like, redeemably well.
I don't know. I've seen worse.
Yeah.
So, like, that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm not afraid to give negative stars.
I'm sure there will be negative stars.
Yeah. We might get one next week. Okay. I remember not caring for the movie.
Good.
Anyway.
I think that's why we chose it.
Let's visit that later.
Yes. So here is like kind of my main issue with the ending and the whole movie itself. So this is like kind of in more recent horror movies. And I know the purpose of this, but it really pisses me off. Leatherface gets shot in the chest. Like in pretty close range. So he should be dead. But then he comes back. And he's alive. And, like, he's just a man. Halloween did this, too, where, like, they have an unkillable monster. And I know it's in the Halloween lore. Like, I get that. I get that's part of the movie. But for this movie, he shouldn't be unkillable.
Mm-hmm.
I know they were setting up for a sequel. I get it. But
it's an obnoxious trope from slasher movies, and Scream does it really well, where it's a given and all the characters know it. That's entertaining, but in this, Leatherface is supposed to be a guy. It's not particularly scary because we know it's going to happen. One of the few things I enjoyed about the recent remakes of Halloween, is that Michael Myers, in a couple of scenes, is directly shot at, and there's always some ambiguity as to whether or not, and I know in the original he was straight up shot in the face, but there's always some ambiguity as to whether or not it even hit him. Like, she shoots him standing in a window and a mirror shatters, so he was standing in the other room. She didn't even hit him. Who knows if...
That was a really good shot.
There's another where he's just walking away and a guy's at reasonably close range and he fires, but Michael Myers doesn't even flinch, so he just has to assume he missed. Who knows?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not loving it. The other issue I have too, this guy's supposed to be like, at minimum, 70 years old.
Yeah, he's ancient.
Yeah, like that's being generous, because like thinking back to the original movie, his brother was probably around like 18, 20, and I assumed that he was the older brother just from like, I don't know, the way it was presented in the movie. So what, he's like 75, 80 then?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what I really was annoyed with this movie.
Yeah, I didn't care for that.
Maybe I should have put that in the bad, but overall, this movie sucked.
Yeah, don't watch it.
No.
or maybe watch it, but make sure you're drinking heavily.
Yeah, my final note, is it watchable? Yes. Should you? No.
This is a tier of movies that is only slightly above not watching it at all. And it's movies you put on without subtitles while you're drinking with your friends with the light on while you're talking. It's not important to pick up much of anything.
No.
If you just want background noise, that's all it's suited for.
It serves a job.
Is there a type of wine worse than cooking wine? Because that's the equivalent of what a movie this is.
I definitely think there is a wine worse than cooking wine.
It's when connoisseurs have that spit bucket. That's the tier of wine it is regurgitated good wine.
All mixed together,
yeah, with different vintages.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think that's our final notes.
Yeah.
So next week we're gonna be reviewing Rings, which is available for free on Pluto and rentable on various sites like YouTube and Amazon.
Just to be clear, this is Rings, the remake.
Oh yeah, Rings 2017.
Yes. I remember thinking it was bad, which usually means that it's going to be fun.
Yes. So make sure you like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram. And hope to see you next week.
Stay spooky.
Music and production done by me.